Welcome to another video from Gweilo 60. I'm sitting here in a park. It's overcast. It's sort of like Vancouver Island in the wintertime, sort of misting but not raining. So the park is basically empty today. I got it to myself. Anyway, that's not what this video is about, as always. Politicizing the COVID-19. It's no difference in politicizing the education camps of the Uyghur population. It's no different than politicizing the security law that they put in Hong Kong. And politicizing COVID-19 is no different than putting a large American presence, military presence, in the South China Sea. The Chinese are spying on us, so what do? We close down embassies. Chinese students, university students are spying on us. So what do? We nix their post-grad work permits so they can't work in the United States or Canada, places like that. Politicizing COVID-19 is no different than starting a trade war with China. It's no different than banning companies like Huawei or ZTE. It's no different than banning apps like WeChat and TikTok. There's no difference. Why isn't there any difference? Well, I'm going to tell you. Actually, politicizing all of these things is basically blaming China for all of the world's problems, but doing it in such a way that it turns the masses of the populations of those countries that do this against China and the Chinese people. Why? Well, we're getting to that. See, I'm a firm believer that the world needs a better understanding of China and the Chinese people, what they do, how they do it, and why they do it. To this date, everybody in the West listens to the mainstream media and listens to their political leaders. I guess they're their leaders. That's why they voted them in, because they think they're the best person for the job. It's not always like that. But they will never get a better understanding of China by listening to these leaders in mainstream media. The bullshit that they throw out there just because, and this is the big one, because they are in competition with China and the Chinese people. A competition for dollars, competition for wealth, competition with other countries around the world. It's no different than, look at it this way. The United States is a big corporation, the biggest corporation in the world, and China is the second biggest corporation in the world. That's debatable, mind you. And they're competing for everybody else's dollars. And that's basically what you're watching on a world scale right now, is the competition between the United States and the Five Eyes countries, because they sort of stick together. They're sort of like a company with just different head offices around the world. Exactly. So, you got Canada, United States, you got Great Britain, Australia, New Zealand. You've got other ones that sort of float in and float out. India wants to be in the group, but everybody goes and looks at India and said, you know what I mean? It's one of those things. But it's no different than big corporations. So now you've got all of these politicians spouting their word to their people. Okay, that makes sense. And you've got the mainstream media that's owned by the rich boys. Exactly. So now we're getting into the understanding that the rich boys run the mainstream media. And every politician, before he gets into office, has to run for office, and that is super expensive, everybody. Where do you think they get the money? From the rich big boys, exactly. So when you get these large corporations that compete with companies like Huawei and ZTE, companies that compete with the Chinese in the world marketplace, and they lobby, especially the military guys, exactly, the ones that are selling the bombs and the planes and all of these things. All of these big corporations are actually telling your politicians what they can and cannot do, because by the time they get elected, they've taken so much money from the big corporations that the big corporations own their ass. Exactly. So the politicians actually are a mouthpiece for the big corporations in the United States and Canada and the Western world. Where in China, no. We saw that, I think, with Ant Group, where Jack Ma tried to circumvent the rules of China got slapped down real good. If that happened in the United States, there would be heads rolling, political heads rolling all over the place. But here, because the government isn't run by the big corporations, exactly. So when you hear all this rhetoric against China and the Chinese people, the Chinese companies, the TikToks and the WeChats and the Huaweis around the world, you know where it's coming from. It's coming from the competition in the Western world. It's coming from the apples of the Western world. So now that we've established that it's not the Western politicians that are attacking places like China, it's the corporations. The world is run by corporations, everybody knows that. The world is run by the big boys, the banks, the money men, the top 1%, the people that have the money to lobby the politicians in the West. And they want to take out China, but you got to understand, if they take out China, a lot of different countries around the world depend on China and their trade with China. What would happen to them? China just became the largest trading partner of the European Union. It's the largest trading partner of the Asian conglomeration of countries here in Southeast Asia. You know, when you get into something like that, when a country like the United States is trying to destroy the economy of China because it's in competition with them, they want them out of business. They don't want to have to deal with them. If they could turn them off and turn them into a poor country for the next 100 years, that's exactly what they would do. The idea is that they use every tactic they can to turn the masses of their population against China that has 1/5, 20% of the world's population. Think about that. They want you as a Westerner to hate 1 out of every 5 people in the world, and you know, it's working. There's a lot of anti-Asian rhetoric going on in the West. There's a lot of people being attacked in the United States of Asian descent, and it doesn't matter whether they're Chinese or Japanese or Korean or what they are. If they're Asian, they look like Chinese, they're a target, and it's because of the rhetoric that's being put out by the mainstream media, YouTubers, politicians, your neighbor. All of these things make a big difference in the way people look at other people. So look at the corporations that are running your country. Those are the ones that want you to hate China. So why do they alienate the Chinese people and the Chinese government so much? Is it that they don't like Chinese people? They don't like the Chinese economy? Is it because they don't like the Chinese government? Is it because they don't understand the Chinese people and their government and the way that they live? Or could it really be that it's because the big corporations in the West own the mainstream media and own your politicians, and they don't like the Chinese because the Chinese are in competition with them for the almighty dollar, and that's the bottom line that we're talking about here, guys. Wars have been won and lost over the almighty dollar. The big corporations have trashed out countries around the world. Look at Venezuela. It has more oil than it knows what to do with, but is dirt poor. Why? Sanctions. By who? The government of the Western world, basically the United States. And now they are one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere, if not the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Why? Because they didn't like their government. Why? Because they wouldn't do what the big corporations wanted them to do. They wouldn't let those corporations run their country. So they just got trashed. They're trying to do the same thing to China. And China knows it. China understands that. China has 1.4 billion consumers, and they're going into more domestic consumption than they have in the past. It makes sense to them just for the fact that they're not relying on the Western world to sell their goods to as much anymore. The technology that they're producing in China is to be self-sufficient in technological advances in the future. So they're not relying on the West for, say, computer chips. They're getting more self-sufficient in their dealings in business. They're automating their factories. They're just doing a better job than the Western world is, and the Western world is scared that China's going to take over, is going to make more money, is going to become richer, it's happening, is going to become more powerful. And if China becomes the major political and economic powerhouse in the world in the future, these corporations that are running the world as you know it right now will be no more. They won't be able to compete. They'll lose their place in that big palace on the top of the mountain. I don't think the United States really gives a rat's ass what's good or bad for the rest of the world, just as long as it's good for them and their political party and their corporations that run those political parties, and there's those corporations that run those mainstream medias that influence the minds of the people of their country. Because without the minds of the people of their country, they can't wage a war, whether it's a trade war, a cold war, a hot war against any country around the world. And you've seen the United States in a lot of hot wars. They call them, spreading democracy or policing or whatever. They had weapons of mass destruction. Oh no, they didn't. All of these different things. China's a little bit of a different beast, though, because it is so large. It has such a population. It has it's an economic powerhouse and a military powerhouse now. They don't want to be a military powerhouse. They believe in soft power, not in hard power. They believe in making friends around the world that they can do business and trade with, rather than just taking over that country and saying, you didn't do it our way, so we're gonna take you out. We're gonna change the political leaders in your country so it more suits what the rich people that run our country want. Oh yeah, you heard it here. And I think there's another really important political view that you have to look at too. If China takes over as the economic powerhouse of the world, becomes a richer country than the United States, that just means that for the last 70 or 80 years, the political views that they've been spouting in the West for the last 70 or 80 years are wrong. How do you and they've destroyed so many countries for those political views. Democracy, it's the only way, it's the best way, it's the only, but then they see a place like China growing in leaps and bounds. In the last 40 years, it's just about caught up to the United States. In the next 10 or 15 years, it'll surpass the United States as an economic power in the world. It will influence more countries. It will assist more countries in bringing their populations out of poverty, just like it did with 800 million people in China over the last 20 years. Things like this, and the United States sees that. Canada sees that. The UK sees that, and their dominance over the rest of the world is coming to an end. And this scares the living bejesus out of these people. And it's not the politicians that it scares. It's the people that are running the large businesses that operate in these countries that actually have designed those countries to make their businesses more powerful. Because without the politicians being the buffer between the people and the companies, then the people would understand it's the companies making these decisions on their behalf. One vote, one person. As a person that doesn't lobby the government with millions and millions of dollars every year, your voice is not being heard. The voices of the corporations that give the money to the politicians, that's whose vote is counted. You see, I might have a different view on what's a prosperous country, what's a free country. When the government fails to house the people of their countries, when there's poverty, when there's tent cities, when there's people dying on the streets of gun violence, when people can't get a job, when people are hooked on drugs, when people, You know what I mean? When people can't go out after dark in their own neighborhood because it's too dangerous, when you can't trust your government to do the right thing, then I think that government has failed, and failed big time. You get into places, in some places in the United States, and it's nice. They've got great communities. They've, I've traveled extensively through the United States, and there's a lot of really nice places. And then I've gone to some places in the United States where I wouldn't get out of my car. Like, seriously, it's just too dangerous. I wouldn't go there at night, not a chance in hell. And there's a lot of places that I wouldn't go during the day. I can't say that about China. I've been all over this country. I've been daytime, nighttime, places I have no idea where I am, and I always feel 100% safe. I don't see a great number of homeless people. I don't see tent cities. I don't see drug addicts. I don't see the despair of the people thinking that tomorrow is going to be worse than today. People are losing they're losing hope in the West, and in the East, in China, I see that people have great hope. So when you listen to your politicians and you listen to your mainstream media, and they tell you that China is a bad place, they tell you China's communist government, authoritarian, they're imprisoning the Uyghur people. They're not imprisoning the Uyghur people, they're educating the Uyghur people. When they educate the Uyghur people are more self-sufficient. They gain wealth for their family, they gain wealth for their country, making China a better place, making China a richer place. They don't want that. They don't want China to be a richer place. They're in competition with China. Remember that? The same thing in Hong Kong with the security law. When they brought in the security law, people couldn't go to work. People were not making money. They weren't being prosperous. They bring in the security law, everything stops, people go back to work, the city starts moving in a proper direction again, people are starting to get prosperous. It's better for Hong Kong, it's better for the Hong Kong people, and it's better for China, because Hong Kong is a major city in China, making China a stronger, more prosperous place. You see, that's competition with the Western world, and that's why they go after these things. It's the same thing when they attack Huawei and ZTE. These corporations are in competition with corporations in the West. So if Huawei and ZTE do good, that's good for the Chinese people, that's good for the Chinese economy. That's bad for the West, because the West is in competition, not politically, but financially, with China. So yes, there are people behind the politicians in the West that are manipulating your politicians and manipulating your mainstream media. They want the power, they want to keep the power, they don't want to give the power to you, they don't want to have to compete with another power out there, a powerhouse like China out there. So what they do is they try to turn your heads against the Chinese people and the Chinese government. And as they do that, they gain more power, more political power, and they make more bucks, because now that you ban Huawei and you ban TikTok and you ban WeChat and you ban this and you ban that, you don't sell your chips to them, so they can't do this, and you know what I mean? So what they're trying to do is they're trying to use you and your country to attack unfairly corporations around the world. They did it to Toshiba in Japan. They did it. They've done it to lots of countries and lots of companies around the world over the years. And now China is the next one, and they're using you as political fodder. You're going to be paying more for your products, because they're not going to be coming from China in the future. They're going to be coming from the United States. They're going to be coming from Great Britain, where wages are higher, and they don't build it on a large. They don't build as many at one time as they do in China. So as you build more, economies of scale makes sense. You build more, the price of each unit gets cheaper. You're not going to see that. So in the future, you're going to be paying more than the Chinese people. Well, actually, right now, you pay more for your products in the West than the Chinese people pay for their products here. Their purchasing power parity here is above the United States right now. They can, with the money that they make right now, they can buy more than you can with your money over there. Plus the cost of the products are lower because they make more of them. I'm running a Huawei phone. Why? Because I switched from Apple to Huawei because Huawei is just a better phone. You know, but they don't want you to hear that. Oh, this is going to get demonetized right off the bat, this video. Oh, hey, if there's a video, if there's advertising in this video, let me know. But you see, the understanding about what's going on in the world and why are they attacking China so much? Why are they taking things that aren't true and just telling you over and over and over again that they are? There is no genocide in the Uyghur population. There is no re-education camps. They are education camps. They are educating their people to make their lives better. The security law in Hong Kong is there for a reason. You have one in the United States, basically just the same thing. And that's another video from Gweilo 60. If you like this video, as always, like, comment, subscribe, push that share button. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the bell, hit the like button, and whatever you do, don't forget to put a couple bucks in the children's Patreon account. It's for a good cause. Thanks for watching. Bye now.